Hello and welcome to the Quest for the Best, the show where I sit down and talk about a handful of relatively recent movies in a free-form, discussion-based format. This episode I'm going to be talking about Mission Difficult, Fallout New Vegas, Incredibles 2, Skyscraper, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, and Pacific Rim Uprising. I'll be avoiding spoilers unless specifically stated otherwise, and the time codes are on the screen if you want to skip to an individual movie if you're not interested in the others. So let's start. So the new Mission Impossible movie, Mission Impossible Fallout, this one's called, I guess, is the latest from Christopher McQuarrie, who was also responsible for the last one, Ghost Mission or something, Rogue Man. Doesn't matter. Point is, it was just fine. I remember it just being fine. I actually watched... I've really got to see what it's called because it's going to get so confusing if I don't. Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. That's the one he did before that, and that's the one I watched the other day after seeing this one because I was hearing good things about Fallout. So I went to see it, not expecting that it was going to tie in so heavily to the previous movie, which I had seen when it came out, but that was years ago now, so I couldn't really remember the villain who carries over into Fallout, and there are other recurring characters and bits of story here and there that will make a bit more sense and give you a bit more context if you remember the previous movie, which is both a positive and negative, because while it's a fine movie, like I've already forgotten what it's called because all these films have the same goddamn names, Rogue Nation was just fine. Or maybe that's just with my new perspective, because Mission Impossible Fallout is a lot more than fine. It's actually probably one of the best action movies of this scale, I think, and I want to say, without this being hyperbolic or ridiculous, one of the best ever made. I've seen it twice now at the cinema, and I rarely go back for repeat viewings, but I thought this was the perfect kind of blockbuster, thriller, just classic stuff that really makes it worthy to see on the big screen. The team behind this movie must have just happened to get everything working just right for this perfect lightning in a bottle movie. Because a bit of backstory, I like most of the Mission Impossible movies. They're fine action movies, fine spy thrillers, but they've never got much of a response from me. As I said, I barely remember anything from them. They're often very corny, somewhat predictable, kind of schlock. And on the surface, Fallout does do a lot of the same things. It's very corny and schlocky on purpose, and it's fully aware of what it is and what it's trying to achieve. But much like films such as Mad Max Fury Road, or even something like Dunkirk, which is an experiment in constantly building tension and just grabbing hold of you and not letting go, or giving you a chance to breathe until the thing is over. I think the breakneck pace of Mission Impossible Fallout is possibly one of the things I like most about it. As soon as things start to get kind of silly or stupid, much like in the previous films, where it can bog it down to a certain extent, it speeds over it so quickly that you never even really get a chance to question or linger or think about all the tiny little details and if they make sense or not. And there's even a great line where Tom Cruise is running away from some bad guys. It's hardly a spoiler. And he's asked through his headset thing, "Oh, who's chasing you now?" And Tom Cruise just says, "Does it really matter who's chasing me?" And then the action just continues. And it's a great moment of self-awareness where the film's directly acknowledging that yes, there are points where the story is overly complex, difficult to follow, but it's about the journey. It's about, look what we are showing you right now. This is some of the best choreographed action, most impressive stunt work I've ever seen, and it doesn't fall into that trap that so many action films fall into where it blows its load too early. Speaking of Rogue Nation, the scene climaxes in the opening where Tom Cruise is hanging onto a plane. Nothing of that scale ever happens again, so in comparison, it seems less impressive, less grandiose, less important. But in Fallout, every single action sequence is either so unique and different from one another, or they amp up the stakes so far that it's constantly surprising you. It was so nice to see this really wide shot action. Everything was clear to follow, but not overly choreographed in the way that it can be sometimes, where it just seems like everyone's practiced these super moves and then they're reenacting it flawlessly in front of a camera. There are scenes in the film that perfectly capture the kind of chaos, the organized chaos that comes with brawling and driving vehicles exceptionally fast and whatever antic Tom Cruise gets himself into next. And so you want about Tom Cruise, but my god, for what's he approaching 60 at this point? He's more fit than I will ever be, and I think most of us will be. It is unbelievable watching him do his thing. His commitment to the role is impressive. If we stop for a minute just to talk about the plot itself, because I don't think I've even mentioned it. On IMDb, the description reads, Ethan Hunt and his team, along with some familiar allies, race against time after a mission gone wrong. That's it. That's all they go into there. I'm pretty sure that exact same sentence right there could be used to describe any of the Mission Impossible movies. This one perfectly captured that 60s schlock that I'm after with these films. That constant, how's he gonna get out of this one? Set piece writing. And with a score by Lorne Balfe, who I'm only a little bit familiar with. He worked on the Dunkirk score and was one of Hans Zimmer's underlings. Might be the key component to what has really made this film come together, with a really unique set of instruments used, like bongos coming back as a little reference from the original TV show that Mission Impossible is based off. And just like in Dunkirk, with that never-ending rising tension, the drums, the strings always just pounding. It works so well for all of the set pieces in the film, especially my favorite being Skydive or Airdrop or whatever the track is, whichever one plays when they're diving out of a plane. It's just all very impressive stuff. I can't believe it all came together so well. And also a shout out to the comedy is strangely effective. It's not as on the nose as something like a Marvel film, which is throwing jokes at you non-stop to try and alleviate some of that tension, but there are jokes in the film, mostly from Simon Pegg, that do help to alleviate that tension now and again. So it's not completely dour and gives you a moment to take a breath without ever being annoying. And much like how chaotic and non-stop the movie is, my description and thoughts here have also been completely scattershot and nightmarish. But what it boils down to is that I think it's an amazing action film. It's not the kind of thing you'd go to see if you want fully fleshed out characters and deep themes. It's simple stuff, and if you want a superbly executed action film that has the grandiose scale without ever losing that sense of realism and weight to it, I would highly recommend Mission Impossible Fallout. I think I gave it a 4 or a 4.5 on my Letterboxd. So Incredibles 2 is the long-awaited sequel to my favourite Pixar film, The Incredibles, which I must have been a kid when it came out at this point. So I remember reading somewhere that director Brad Bird, and writer, said he wasn't willing to do a sequel to The Incredibles until he came up with a good idea for it. And while I fully am not convinced that this was the idea that got the ball rolling, and it wasn't just the fact that he had a chance to direct a huge film like this that would obviously look good on his resume and make a lot of money, I think The Incredibles 2 is very enjoyable. It doesn't capture the essence or what made the original so special, but I think on its own, it's a perfectly fun and entertaining superhero movie, action movie, and family animated movie. There's no time jump. It continues right after where the original Incredibles ends, and much like the original Incredibles, it captures that campy 50s, 60s kind of motif, which sets it apart somewhat from the slew of superhero movies we are constantly seeing in Hollywood now, that for the most part are set in modern times, bar a couple. The story itself is nothing particularly to write home about. As you've probably seen from the trailers, it's all about Mr. Incredible kind of being one-upped by Mrs. Incredible, who gets picked for this business opportunity to try and change the law about superheroes being illegal, so he's left at home to look after the kids. And isn't it funny how hard it is for the guy who's never properly looked after the kids without his wife's help to do it by himself? And as stupid and cheesy and bad maybe as that sounds, I do think they make it work. I was especially blown away by the animation, which of course is no surprise, but it is worth mentioning. I'm such a sucker for amazing character designs, and every little detail that was there in the original was only expanded upon in the sequel just because of better technology. So especially the way they animate Mr. Incredible and how tired and distressed he looks, I thought was very amusing. I think the bigger problems come in from where they decided to go with the villain, who I won't spoil, but there's this insanely predictable twist that I thought was so obvious. I thought for sure they were going to undercut the obvious choice and explain that it was someone else, but no, it is who you think, and that's always extremely disappointing when you see something so obvious from a mile away. But I think the way it captured that kind of serial, campy, superhero schlock feeling, it kind of feels like a cartoon you'd see as a kid on a Sunday morning. It has that vibe to it, and it doesn't take itself too seriously. There are plenty of jokes. Most of them hit, some of them miss. And the way I've been having to break it down in my head is, okay, the original movie is held in such high esteem, such high regard at this point, that if I try and forget about that movie for a minute, how does this hold up on its own? And taking out my problems with the villain, I think this is still easily better than a lot of the superhero films we get. Sure, it's aimed for a slightly younger audience, but as an ensemble superhero action film, I think it does a very good job overall. The action scenes are all very well choreographed and thought out and flowing. My only gripe, considering the action, is that there almost isn't enough of it. In the original, there's the great build-up of how the action sequence towards the end feels big and important. And the one in this film, while it does feel like it's affecting a lot of different things on a grand scale, visually it's not as engaging or grandiose. And that might just be because I'm spoiled at this point. Like Infinity War, we literally had scenes where planets are being pulled from the sky and thrown at people. So there might be a bit of the superhero fatigue thing affecting me here. But my initial impression was that I enjoyed it from beginning to end. The action and family aspects are true to the original, while never quite reaching the peaks. It always stays of a relative quality, aside, as I say, from a villainous role that I won't spoil here. Not sure how it's going to hold up on rewatching. I have to admit I'm not going to be revisiting it anytime soon particularly, but I think for what it was going for and how good of a director Brad Bird is, I think it's most of what you want to see The Incredibles be doing again. And I can see why some people don't particularly like it or don't think it holds up as well as the original, but I thought it was enjoyable. I gave it something like a 4 on my letterbox, so you can argue about that in the comments. So I saw Skyscraper, the Rawson Marshall Thurber film. Yeah, I don't know who he is either. But here we are with this movie, the new action vehicle with The Rock in it. This time, he's fighting a building, and whereas Mission Impossible highlights exactly how to make an effective, tense, how are you going to get out of this one action thriller, Skyscraper is a brilliant example of the complete opposite. It's effectively a failure in every way possible, starting with the fact that it asks you to suspend your disbelief to such a ludicrous level. We're talking about a guy who, first off, we have to believe that The Rock is some kind of genius security expert who is ex-military and bomb disposal or whatever. Like, give me a break. And by the way, I'm going to be spoiling this film because I don't think anyone should watch it, so you're not missing out on anything. So the basic story is some Chinese guy, some billionaire, builds the tallest building in the world with the intent of it being the 8th wonder of the world as a big tourist attraction to bring in loads of money. And of course it all goes wrong. Terrorists make their way in and they lock down the building a la Die Hard. But of course The Rock's family are still in the building while it's on fire, so he has to figure out a way to get back into the building and save everyone and kick all the terrorists' ass. And for a film that's only an hour and 42 minutes long, it is boring to the point of tears for, I must be about the first 40 minutes. Basically up until that point where he makes the climb, the 60-story or something climb up a crane that conveniently happens to be next to the building so he can make the jump. So just to reiterate, he climbs within like 10 minutes a 60-story crane and then jumps an impossible jump. I think someone on Reddit proved that with the trajectory he was going, he would miss the jump. So not even that attention to detail is thought about for even a minute. He jumps back into the building. It gets ridiculous to the point where duct tape is an integral part of the plot, and it's supposed to be this weird, funny bit in the movie where he like wraps tape around his hands and uses it to climb the building. And it thinks it's being so funny and clever when it really isn't. It has nothing to say whatsoever. It even at points tries to mimic what real actual good movies do. Like for example, when the film opens, it's on this tense hostage situation thing, and I was sat there like, wow, I was not expecting this for this film. Like, what does this have to do with the plot? They must call back to this later. Because effectively what happens is there's a hostage situation, it goes badly, and it's how Dwayne Johnson loses his leg. But aside from that event being the reason for how he lost his leg, it has no point narratively. They call back to it towards the end, but the only difference being the solution for his problem in comparison is that there are huge mirrors everywhere. And I know that might sound like it makes no sense, but in the film it makes sense. You can just tell at the beginning of the film where there's this really clumsy, boring exposition where these people are like, well, this is the tallest building ever made. It's been split into sections. First is the section at the bottom where people are allowed to come and have a look at it, but then the middle section is off limits because it's not ready for the public yet and all the security inspections need to be done. And at the very top is the 8th wonder of the world, and it's this huge globe thing that you can stand in, and it's covered in screens so it can give the illusion of being invisible. So it looks like you're standing on nothing and kind of flying. And it also has all these mirrors that can pop up out of the floor like one of those fairs. It's all very silly. And I said it's incredibly boring up until the point where he climbs a 60-story crane. And it only becomes entertaining after that because it is so poorly conceived, so poorly constructed, so laughably schlocky in a way that clearly is not self-aware. It thinks it is being cool, it thinks it is being original and clever with this concept, and it's not just a total rehash of Die Hard but with a load more money thrown at it. Look, it's the biggest building in the world. It's not just any old building, it's the biggest building in the world, and the Rock's in it, and there's a crane and he has to jump off the crane and it's all on fire, and this huge scheme. It's like, oh my god, if you want to recapture the magic of something like Die Hard, you need to understand the fundamentals of what makes it work. And even then, if you're not even trying to recapture something like Die Hard and what makes a film like that so effective, at least focus on what makes action thrillers effective. First off, the pace being one of them, not this droll, slow, poorly executed, especially when it comes to the action. For a film that's supposed to be like an action thriller, there's an atrocious fight scene in the back of a car, which is exactly what everyone harps on about when it comes to how not to film action. All these really quick cuts and shaky cam, you just can't tell what's happening. It's just a dreadful film that admittedly I was crying with laughter at, but even then, that is laughing at it, not with it. So avoid this one at all costs. I'd give it a half star. Speaking of The Rock, here's Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. A film I'd heard isn't as bad as it looks. No, it's as bad as it looks. With the story here being a modern retelling of Jumanji, where 4 kids are sucked into a video game, and the only way they can escape is to work together to finish the video game. It's this really sad, obviously written by a bunch of adults who don't play video games, attempt to capture what it's like to be in a video game. But what confuses me the most about this movie, and you might say this isn't fair, but the rules of the way this video game world works is so confusing. Because from our perspective, inside the video game just looks photorealistic. Well, sort of. There's lots of really bad green screen and atrocious special effects. But do you really need to know any more than the tagline? 4 kids sucked into a video game. They gotta finish the game. It's just every stupid film with that same plot, but with a new skin on it. But with this time with Dwayne Johnson and the tiny guy, Kevin Hart. I'll give props to Jack Black, who was clearly having a lot of fun with the role of playing a teenage girl in like a 50-year-old's overweight body. That's like the only kind of fun, goofy gimmick it has. Because I'm so sick of The Rock in every film he's in just playing, wow, look at my bod. God, I'm so ripped, guys. Man, I'm awesome. And then every character's like, oh man, The Rock, you're so awesome. You're so strong. Look at those arms, bro. Every film he's in. It is so one note. I'm so sick of it. And the same with Kevin Hart. I've only seen him in like 3 or 4 films. But in every one he makes the same jokes. Hey, I'm short. Hey, I'm black. Did I already make the short joke? Hey, everybody, I remember that I'm short. Isn't that funny? No, it's not funny. It's lazy. And Karen Gillan is there. Okay, I originally only put it on because I was hoping it was going to be so bad that it would be funny, but it's not. It's actually just incredibly boring, especially the 3rd act where they're wrapping things up. I just can't remember it. And one of the, I think it's the Jonas Brothers or one of those types of bands, just one of the people from that shows up as a character who was sucked into the game originally. Sorry if that's a spoiler. No, I don't think it is. Can't even remember. There's nothing memorable about the film. It's just throwaway, pointless garbage. I'm honestly surprised I made it to the end. It's the kind of thing that, like, I'm sure most of you are thinking, why do you even bother? You would never like a film like this. Why did you even put it on? Because I'm looking for a film with The Rock in it that I can say, finally one that doesn't suck. But no, Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle is a stinker. Unfunny, boring, repetitive jokes, forgettable, by the books, just about the same as every mediocre action comedy adventure film out there. Can't even remember what I rated it, it's so forgettable. Speaking of forgettable action movies, I watched Pacific Rim Uprising, sequel to Guillermo del Toro's Pacific Rim, which is pretty good. It knows what it is, it fully embraces how goofy and stupid it is, and it just goes with it. It has some great action sequences that are basically just a live action cartoon, and even at points it's not live action, it's just a bunch of CG robots punching each other and throwing boats at each other and killing big creatures. And at points, Pacific Rim Uprising almost recaptures that level of goofiness, but right as it's about to get there, it always just drops the baton and just trips over itself and falls flat on its face. Even the charisma of John Boyega can't hold this together. See, the attention to detail that Guillermo del Toro was able to put into the original Pacific Rim with his ridiculously good production design is totally lacking in Pacific Rim Uprising. There is so much dreadful green screen and really lazy sets that take all of the color and flourish and excitement that was in the original Pacific Rim and just sucks it all out. And part of what I like about the original Pacific Rim is how creative they got with the kind of creature design, with the, what are they called? The kaiju. And while kaiju are in the film eventually, for most of it, it's just big robots punching each other, which to me is far less interesting. And while John Boyega's doing his very best, the people he has to act opposite are all just these bits of cardboard reading off lines from the mediocre script, at points bad script. I don't know how Scott Eastwood keeps getting work. Oh wait, yeah I do. But he's fine. He has basically no charisma. But they have this obligatory, I'm a junker. I put together robots because my family were killed and I'm an orphan character who's very bad. Oh, she was not good. And she's got her Dibby robot. Charlie Day and Bern Gorman, who are like the best characters in the original Pacific Rim, return. And, well, Bern Gorman is good. But what they do with Charlie Day's character is, I think I actually said, what? Out loud. When things happen with him. I'm not going to spoil it because whatever, man. Who cares, honestly. I didn't find it offensive or boring, particularly. The thing that ticked me off most was that they thought the film was so awesome, and loads of big blockbusters are doing this now, where at the end they're like, yeah, we may have finished this battle, but next time we're coming to you, aliens, so watch out and book your tickets for the next movie. There probably won't be another one. The new Independence Day did that as well. It was like, yeah, we beat the aliens on Earth, but next time, we're going to you. Audience, be excited. This is going to be sweet. And then there's never going to be a sequel to that film. I thought there were a lot of parallels, actually, with that film. Isn't Scott Eastwood even in that movie? No, he wasn't. It's just quite forgettable, like every role he's had. So another disappointment was the action. I don't really remember any of it. I remember a sequence at the end that was just like a video game and not that kind of campy fun that the original one had. And while I was praising Lorne Balfe for his Mission Impossible score, I'm pretty sure he did this one for Pacific Rim Uprising, and it uses the theme from the original movie a couple of times, which is okay, but when these themes are made, these like catchy, awesome themes like the original Pacific Rim theme are made, why do they just abandon them? This always happens. It's the kind of film that you can just have on in the background, it's there, it exists, and when it ends, nothing's really changed. You might laugh or cringe a couple times, and it might distract you for a couple minutes, but once the credits roll, you've already forgotten everything that happens. Overall, a pretty weak follow-up, dropping the ball on everything that made the original work. I gave it a 1.5, so you don't really need to see that one. So those are the films I was willing to talk about in this episode. A bit too many stupid blockbusters for my liking, but that's what I've been watching recently. I'm still getting the hang of a way to formulate these in a way that makes sense. it's kind of nutty from my end. I'm just sat in a chair talking to myself effectively, so I still got to get used to that. I returned to this series because there was so many people asking for it. I thought, might as well. It gives me something else to do in between the big, heavily edited uploads for those that want it. So I know they're not all ridiculously detailed analysis and it all is just thoughts from the top of my head, but really, for anything more, I'd just have to do fully structured videos and it would just take up all my time. So let me know what you think, on Reddit preferably. I'll actually see it there, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!